Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this wonderful conference. Today, this is actually the last panels for today's session. In this particular panel, it is a unique feature. It is called Working for the Future of Saudi Arabia, Labor Market Reform. So I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful speaker from Duke University. He's going to give his presentation, and at the end, we'll have questions. However, if during the presentation, if you have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat section or in the Q&A box, and then we'll address them at the end. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. And okay, so you can see my screen, right? Okay, so I will talk today about future of Saudi Arabia labor market and the reforms to tackle the problems with the labor market. And I think I will talk around half an hour and then open up the floor for questions. And so to start with, I think we need to talk about the problems with the Saudi Arabia's labor market, and then the government's reform attempts to tackle these problems. So I think there is like a structural problems and historical problems with the Saudi Arabia's labor market that results in these symptoms that we see here. So I think like one of the big problems is the youth unemployment. So I will show the some graphs and like the general situation of labor market, and then talk about the underlying problems and government's attempts to tackle. So you see in this graph, so we have unemployment rate of different age ranges in this graph, and like for young people who are in the age range between 20 and 30 and maybe 35, you see the unemployment around 30%. So this is a huge unemployment, and this has like a lot of implications about the labor market of Saudi Arabia. And the second problems is the skill mismatch between the workers and the firms. So like there is like a matching problem. The workers are not mostly aware of the private sector's demand for workers, and they don't invest enough for acquiring the skills to be able to competitive in the labor market. And for the firms, they don't know how to hire Saudi nationals because they don't know how to evaluate the credentials of the workers. So we see like a very high share of unemployment between the graduates of undergrad in various fields in this graph. And I think one of the big problems here, this mismatch, is the expectation of Saudi workers for higher wages than the current prevailing wage rate at the Saudi private market. And I will talk about the reasons for that. But the thing is, so there is like a dual market in Saudi Arabia. So there is like this market for foreigners where the firms access to cheaper labor, and there is another market for Saudi nationals where wages are higher due to various reasons that I will talk more. And third problem regarding Saudi labor market is the quality of public education. So here, these two graphs are from a Harvard Evidence for Policy Design's report on education and labor market. And so here we see the students at great force performance in various fields, mathematics, science, and reading. And on the left, we see Saudi Arabia's students score, average score. And on the right, like the further right, we see the global benchmark. And you see like the scores of the students in the public schools and in Saudi Arabia is much lower than the global benchmark. And also, if we compare to Gulf countries, their scores are second lowest in the region as well. So this has a lot of implications for labor market, because this is actually one of the reasons that make that underprepare the workers to the labor market. And fourth problem, I think that is one of the fundamental problems, is the low share of Saudi nationals in the private sector. And I think with explaining that, I will talk about the underlying problems of all these symptoms. And here we, like in the private sector, the share of Saudi nationals is around 20%. So that means 80% of the Saudi, 80% of private sector are actually filled by the foreign nationals. And I think if we evaluate the reasons for this low share of Saudi nationals, we see the structural problems of the Saudi labor market. When we go back at the history, at 70s, there was this oil boom with higher oil prices, and before that, Saudi economy was like a subsistence economy. So it was a rural economy, it was backwards, and it wasn't developed enough. And with this money, more like petrodollars coming, the government has chosen the option to open up this Saudi labor market to foreign nationals, to construct, to create the economy. So it was with this oil boom, the economy has developed, and traditionally the labor market were populated by the foreign workers. And I think this is one of the these underlying big problems of the labor market, which is the rentier mentality of Saudi nationals. So the government, by redistributing their oil rents, actually they create, the government break the link between work and reward for the ordinary people. So ordinary people, they need to have this mentality to get a reward, to get their living, they need to work. But with this oil redistribution, they actually have used to rent coming from oil. And this is one of the underlying problems which resulted all these issues that we see here. And the government has tried to address this, and one of the first attempt was actually opening up the government jobs to Saudi nationals. So the first Saudization attempt actually was done in the public sector. And this is another thing that reinforces these problems. So for Saudi people, the work in the public sector brings much higher wage, and it has much lower risk than working in the private sector. And this is one of the actually rent distributions of the government. And this has also created the like the mentality where people don't take like private sectors seriously. They don't like it is as like a low status symbol to work in private, and it is actually for most of the jobs are in the low skilled industries. And here I will talk about the solutions before Vision 2030 to tackle these problems. And like the first thing that I actually have started to talk is the Saudization program. And second, I will talk about scholarship program. And third, I will talk about some mega projects, but not dwell much into that. Nitakat means phases in Arabic. So it is a way for government to bring quotas for sectors to increase the Saudi nations. So this program has started at 2011, and depending on your sector, like the firms need to have some share of Saudi nationals, and if they don't, they cannot renew their work visas for foreign workers. So they, for the next year, actually they cannot hire and they cannot continue to hire these foreign workers. And if they cannot also start new work visas as well. So if you are in this red category, then you need to start to hire Saudi nationals. And so this these have 4 categories. And if you have like for example, if you see the construction sector on the right, and if you are like, so for example, medium firm, if you hire more than 30% Saudi nationals, then you are in the platinum category. So you are free to hire foreign workers and so on. So like these quotas force the firms to hire Saudi nationals. And I will talk about the problems with this approach of tackling the foreign shares with the Nitakat program. First one is obvious one. I think it is Peck 2011 in his academic study. The paper shows that this program actually decreased the total economic activity in the economy. So by forcing firms to hire Saudi nationals, this resulted for some firms to shut down their operations because hiring Saudi nationals is expensive. So by not accessing these foreign nationals, they were no longer profitable and they were out of the business. And so it decreases, this paper shows that it decreases the total economic activity and total employment. So it was harmful to the economy. And the second problem is the ghost Saudization. So this means actually like firms resort to the option to hire Saudi nationals in paper, but they do not, they just pay them to use their Saudi nationality and continue to hire foreign workers for their operations. And this has started to decrease with this government's more heavy-handed enforcement of Nitakat program. But so far, there was such a phenomenon of ghost Saudization, and this actually has made the problems worse on the mentality of Saudi citizens. So like this, like for workers, Saudi nationals, you can just use your nationality card and earn money, and you don't need to work. So this actually made the underlying problem worse than it helped. So the second program was abroad scholarship, and this has the scholarship for students to study at Western universities, at high-ranking universities, and this has started at 2005, and I think it was potentially successful, and it increased the pool of skilled Saudi nationals. But I don't think it was enough to create big changes in the labor market, and we don't have enough data to evaluate the success of the abroad scholarship. And the third attempt was mega projects, and these mega projects, like there was the King Abdullah Economic City was one of them, and this is actually showing the approach of government, which is trying to solve the problems by like top to bottom approach, and these failed drastically, and it didn't bring enough jobs, and it was like a real failure as a mega project. And I think again we see the same issue, like you don't address the underlying problem, and you try to solve the problem by like the easiest approach, but with the mega project, unless you can actually convince private sector to step up and increase the non-oil economic activity, you bound to fail. So, and it failed as well. And now I will talk about Vision 2030, which was actually successful to, I think, address the underlying problems. I think with the Vision 2030, the government is showing that it actually there is an understanding of the underlying problems, and there is an attempt to solve. And what is Vision 2030? This was back then at 2016, when MBS was not crown prince yet, and this was like one of the main projects of MBS for his new role, for preparing himself to his new role of crown prince. And the main goal of Vision 2030 is to prepare the economy to post-oil world. So this is like the government aims to increase the non-oil share of the industry in GDP and also in the budget, and it wants to increase the private sector employment, it wants to increase the Saudization rate, and so on. So it is like a very big very big vision to prepare the Saudi economy to post-oil world. And in terms of labor market, what did Vision 2030 achieve, aim, and what did it achieve? I will discuss that, and I will discuss some merits and this the problems with the Vision 2030. As I said, I think Vision 2030 addresses the problem better. It shows the awareness of the government of the problems regarding the mentality, regarding the labor, work ethics of the Saudi nations. And the first change I observed is it has a new policy for attracting talent. So previously, Saudi government was just trying to decrease this foreign share of the employment, because the government was assuming that these jobs were in low-skilled industries, and I think it is true. But by making the life difficult for foreign workers, you actually fail to attract talent as well to the country. So the Vision 2030 envisions like a Saudi green card for talented people, and it is actually enabling a way to circumvent these nitakat rules for talented people, for skilled people. And the second is the healthy matching process that I have talked about, like this mismatch between workers and firms. And so it is aiming to increase internship programs for students to prepare them more to the labor market. And it brings like a retraining programs for older people, and it wants to increase the female participation rate, and it's enabling female workers to find jobs. And so I think that is one of the successful fronts of Vision 2030. I will show the graph about female participation rate. And the fourth thing is the changing the mentality and the culture of the country. I think it is related to opening up the country to more secularization and decrease the power of religious elite in the country. I think that is an important part of Vision 2030, and I think it was partly successful in changing the mentality. And I think one of the showcases of the Vision 2030 was lifting ban on women's driving, and I think that has enabled like female workers to to drive really to their work. And so here we see the female force participation rate of female labor force participation rate. And you see it has started at 2017, it was around 17%, and in 2021 it reached around 33%. So this is an incredible change. This is like a very drastic change in the female labor force participation rate, and I think that we need to keep an eye on it, and that is potentially very important. Like it is also important for changing the work culture of the country. So like most of the places were not female friendly before, and so it is showing that change in the workplace and culture of workplace, and also it shows change in the culture, change in the family, and so on. So it is like a huge change that we will need to talk more in the future. And I think yes, this was important change in the female participation rate. But if you look at the this result actually may come from Saudization policies as well. So with Vision 2030, the Nitakat program that I have mentioned before has increased the enforcement of it. And the easiest way for Saudi firms is to hire women, maybe in paper as well. So we don't know much about how this change actually took place in the practice, but I think still it is a very important success of the Vision 2030. And now I will provide a general analysis of the Vision 2030 and their aims, and how whether it is feasible to reach their aims or not. I think the first thing that we need to address here is that there is a non-realistic time frame of Vision 2030. So we are at 2022, and this Vision 2030 has started at 2016. So we are halfway into it almost, and we like the aims in this document is very unrealistic. So like Stephen Hartog in his study, he calculates in a very optimistic scenario to Saudi economy's non-oil sector to reach the OECD average. It needs up to 2071, that is the most optimistic scenario of increasing the Saudi non-oil sector, and it cannot happen before 2050, and the more realistically, it cannot happen before 2071. I think that is the one thing that elephant in the room that we need to talk about. And the second thing is the possibility of potential backlash. So this is I have talked about the rentier mentality of the Saudi nationals, and so here the Vision 2030 wants to transform that radically. So it's one this document envisions an economy where people invest in in their education, in their skills, and work mostly in private sector, pay their taxes, and so on. So it envisions economy where there is not much rent distribution coming from oil. And so we see most of the Saudi nationals work in the private sector at lucrative jobs, at high wage sectors, and potentially the Saudi government needs to decrease this the public employment job, and it needs to channel that into more productive sectors, and that may require people to retrain themselves into this new work environment, new labor market environment. And this is not a easy process politically. So you need to convince people to pay more taxes and earn less benefit from oil. And the second is it is about the rule of law and political environment. And I think these are very much intertwined, but I think the government wants private sector to step in and to increase jobs for people. And I think for that, people with especially wealth, they need to tie their money and invest their money in Saudi Arabia. And this is for that you need to convince them. You need to convince them there is a rule of law and there is their property rights will be enforced and so on. And I think for example, the government's approach to these issues may not satisfy the private sector money enough. So we see in this Jamal Khashoggi issue, the foreign investment has failed considerably, and also the purge against corruption was also maybe a cautionary tale for wealthy people to invest their money. I think that is one of the problems. And the fourth problem, I think that is the most important one, is the potential of an increasing demand for political rights. And so here, what Vision 2030 envisions is a Western country or developed country is middle class, and people, as I said, in white collar jobs, who are skilled and they do their part, and at the end they may demand more political rights. So it is not so you cannot bring just skills and not the other parts that came with it in other countries. That is the demand for political rights. And I think there is a famous saying, no taxation without representation. So this, at the end, in the post-oil world, if we envision and developed economy where people pay their taxes and the government is financed through taxes, then this this will be like a real long-term problem. And I don't see the government's approach is in any way increasing like a political rights for people, like increasing the participation in the political scene. So we don't see that, and this has potential problem for actually feasibility of this huge labor market transformation. And future ahead, I think I may open up some of these in the question and answers, but I think the Vision 2030 has the right identification of the problems in the labor market, and it has done some important steps in changing the labor market, in changing the mentality, increasing the female labor force participation, and so on. I showed that. But I think these are low-hanging fruits. You have a very low female labor force participation, and increasing that is a low-hanging fruit. And as what we see in this, in these 6 years after Vision 2030 document, we don't see any increase in the male labor force participation of Saudi nationals. Not like this. I don't remember the number, but it doesn't have any increase in the jobs for Saudi nationals and for male participants. And I think that is the hard thing to do, increasing the jobs for people. I think that is one thing that government needs to focus on, increasing these jobs and potentially high-skilled jobs. And as I said, the mega problems is potentially very problematic because it is very top-down approach, and it does not address the underlying problems and so on. So there is Neom City, which has projected to cost around $500 billion. It is a very huge money, and I don't think that is a good approach, to invest that much money into this a mega project, and which has an uncertain prospect of success. But increasing focusing on jobs is a better approach, and focusing on changing the mentality regarding this rentier mentality, breaking up the rentier mentality. Second important indicators that government needs to see in the future, because as I said, one is jobs and the other is mentality. And one of the future problems, a long-term view, is MBS is opening up too many fronts in this battle. So it is taking against some factions, the MBS is now against the religious elite. So there is one front, and one front is in the family, in the some factions are subdued, and that is one front. And the other front may be an increase in taxation and decrease in the labor, the government jobs, and that is too many fronts that may be dangerous, and it may be successful, but as I said, there is this in the long term aim to have a real successful change. It needs a different approach politically, and the current approach I don't think would be successful in bringing up these radical changes. But in future, I expect some positive developments in the labor market of the Saudi Arabia, but I don't expect it to be such drastic as envisioned by 2030. Thank you for listening. I think that is what I will present, and we can open up with questions if you have one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was a really interesting topic and on Saudi Arabia, which definitely needs more attention. So very grateful to you for sharing your insight. We do have a question, if you don't mind. One of the, oh, we have a question right here. Somebody in the Q&A, Natalie, they asked, does Vision 2030 emphasize or incentivize entrepreneurship among Saudis as a form of economic development? For example, are there programs that encourage Saudis to start their own businesses within the kingdom?
Yes, that is one of the emphasis, and there is one program specifically to incentivize entrepreneurship among Saudis, and especially amongst females as well. So the government is aware of the entrepreneurship issue, and there is program, and that is one of the things that they try to address.
Wonderful, thank you. And thank you for the question. We have another question. This person is very interested in when you discuss ghost Saudization, and they're wondering if you can discuss a little bit more what that looks like. Is this something that is openly advertised, or do workers see that they're not being used? Or, you know, how does that look when companies hire somebody just for somebody's nationality?
Yeah, so like I think that is where place where we don't talk with like a real concrete evidence and data. That is one issue that like you need to take with a grain of salt. And so like it is we like that is mostly anecdotal evidence where the people are hired just in paper, and we don't know the details into it, but we see some like newspaper articles where actually government is actually stepping in and talking, like saying to the firms, I will prevent that from happening. So if government is trying to address, I think we can be sure that there is some element going on. And I think that is how like the exact process happens. I am not sure, but what we think is like someone is in government records as shows as employed here, and maybe like the citizen gets money for that, or maybe not, maybe they are relatives, they are like friends and so on. We don't know the like the payment between them, but these firms still continue to operate, and like they don't actually hire they don't actually hire in their daily job Saudi people. And also like when we look at the surveys of firms, they actually do not know how to hire Saudi nationals. Like in some sectors, like it is like you don't there is no such a culture where you hire Saudi nationals, and like there is like a problems, like you cannot treat as like foreign workers because they have different culture and they demand more. And so it is like there is like a mismatch between this work environment and the Saudi nationals approach to the issues. And so these all actually create this ghost Saudization problem. But what we see is, I think the government is like more heavy-handed. They are trying to enforce it, they are trying to inspect that and so on. So we can think that it is less important than it was before, but we don't know like the exact details as we don't have data on it.
Thanks for the insight. It's a really interesting concept and issue that the economy is facing there. We have another question, if you'll entertain it. This question is about the, you discussed female participation in the economy. And this person is wondering if you can discuss a little bit perhaps on guardianship laws. They said you addressed it a little bit already, but just didn't know if you want to speak a little bit more specifically on female guardianship laws, and if you anticipate Vision 2030 may have some concrete changes that people may expect or you might see in the future.
So I think like as we have see, like I think that is the most important thing with the Vision 2030 is, I think, this, like the changing the culture and changing, like bringing up the secularization, that like government has this aim, and we see that, like we see like there is like beaches are open, the concerts are coming, and so like the government is pushing for change in the culture, and we see like this like bad like lift on ban on women's driving, and I like I don't know the exact details, whether there is like a new policy, new change in the guardianship rules. I need to look it up, but I expect that it's also change in the midterm, maybe in short term as well. So I think we will see that these restraints will be much less in the future, and that is like government wants to increase the female labor force participation, and so it is showing that, and it is encouraging firms to hire female people, female workers, and so I expect that the guardianship rule will change as well, but I don't know exactly whether there was a change like in this like a meaningful change. I need to look it up.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I think you make a really strong distinction by noting sometimes there's change, but is it meaningful? So thank you for that. We have another question. This question asker was wondering if you would consider maybe speculating a little bit on how tourism might be impacting the economy in the currently and in the future, and just any of your, if you want to share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I didn't address here, and I have a report on Al Sharq forums, and where I discussed the potential competition in the Middle East for being a tourism hub of the country. I think that is one of the things that the government is trying to do with, the city neon. Like one of the important aspects of this city is tourism, and this like changing the culture and enabling like a more Western lifestyle is important part of this discussion about tourism. And I think I expect to see more reforms on enabling like tourists to more openly like live in Western lifestyle, and maybe like the most important I think political discussion will be on ban on alcohol, and I think that is one thing that we can see like a potential backlash from religious elites, but I think the MBS will push it. MBS will push for like more tourism to come, and I think there are a lot of opportunities in that space. I think the tourism will increase because like there's a lot of like unused potentials of the country, and this depends on this like the reforms, and also in the competition between like I can stop share by the way, the competition between like being like a hub in the Middle East. I think this will be an important competition. I think Dubai will continue their like status as like as being hub in terms of tourism and trade and so on. But still, I think we will see important changes in the tourism space as well.
Interesting, thanks. Especially you mentioned Dubai, so it'll be interesting to see, if there is greater development in the tourism industry. Perhaps you see more people country hopping between different Middle Eastern countries. Okay, we have another question. It's a follow-up question to a discussion you had earlier on Vision 2030. It's from Natalie. The question is there any future for the scholarship program, or is it completely removed from Vision 2030?
No, no, it is not. It's continuous. I think it is like I don't have the figures, but I think around 130,000 people is still in the like in universities using this scholarship program, and I think the emphasis on scholarship is not decreased, rather it increased. So like the government spends a significant amount of money to send people to universities abroad, so there is no decrease in that.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we currently don't have any, wait, let me double check. Nope, I think you've answered, we've already lobbed a lot of questions at you. I currently don't see any right now. Do you have any final last thoughts you'd like to add?
Well, thank you for listening, and I think we will see much more like larger changes coming up. I think the government has showed its intention to create important changes, and we will, I think, talk more about Saudi labor market in future as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing all of your insight and research. We deeply appreciate it. And we all hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.